Once a year, on a completely ordinary day that happens to match the date you were born, everyone in your life briefly agrees to participate in a small ritual centered around the fact that you have not died yet. We call this a birthday. And somehow, because we've been doing it since childhood, nobody really stops to examine what's happening. People bring you a cake, they set the cake on fire, they turn off the lights. Everyone gathers around you in a circle and sings a song that contains almost no information. Then you are expected to close your eyes, silently make a request to the universe, and extinguish several tiny flames using air from your lungs. And if you tell anyone this sounds like some kind of ancient summoning ceremony, you're the weird one. The candles are especially suspicious. At some point, human beings decided that the appropriate way to acknowledge another year of survival was to place a number of open flames corresponding roughly to the amount of time you've been alive directly on top of dessert. When you're 5, this is adorable. 5 little candles. Everyone claps. When you're 87, the concept becomes a fire code violation. So eventually we quietly abandon the original system and start buying candles shaped like numbers because apparently even birthday traditions have scalability problems. And then there's the song. You know the one. 4 lines, same melody every time, sung at a tempo that somehow becomes slower the more people are involved. Nobody knows where to look while it's happening. The birthday person sits there smiling because there are cameras pointed at them, while 20 people stare directly into their face and chant their name in unison. There is no comfortable way to receive the birthday song. You can't sing along because that would be strange. You can't just stare blankly because people will assume something is wrong. So you develop this very specific expression humans only use during birthdays. A slightly embarrassed smile that says, "Thank you for acknowledging my continued existence. I have no idea what to do with my hands." And birthdays are one of the few times when your age becomes public information. Most of the year, nobody cares. Then suddenly your numerical relationship with time becomes the main event. So, 32. Yes, apparently. 32 complete rotations around the sun since I arrived here without explanation. Thank you for keeping track. Because that's really what an age is. We say, I am 32, as though 32 is something you are. But you're not 32. 32 is just the number of times the planet you happen to live on has completed an orbit around a star since you were born. If Earth moved around the sun faster, you would technically have more birthdays. If it moved slower, you would have fewer. Your personality wouldn't change. Your knees wouldn't suddenly improve. You'd just be standing there telling people you're 17 because the astronomy worked out differently. Which means birthdays are basically personalized astronomical anniversaries. The Earth reaches approximately the same location in its orbit that it occupied when you first appeared, and everybody goes, "There it is! Get the balloons!" And balloons are another thing. We take thin rubber containers, inflate them with our breath, tie them to furniture, and scatter them around the room as evidence that something important is happening. Balloons appear at birthdays, weddings, graduations, baby showers, retirements. Essentially, any time humans experience an emotion too complicated to decorate normally, we inflate some rubber. The presents make slightly more sense, although even that gets strange when you think about it. Someone was born, so everybody else gives them objects. There is no obvious connection between these two events. Congratulations on successfully emerging from your mother several decades ago. Here is a blender. And everyone has to pretend not to care about the presents, while obviously caring at least a little bit about the presents. "Oh, you didn't have to get me anything," which is a sentence human beings say while actively reaching for the thing you got them. We've created this entire etiquette system where the giver must pretend the gift was no trouble, the receiver must pretend they expected nothing, and both people know perfectly well that if everyone actually followed these statements literally, birthdays would become extremely disappointing. Children, at least, refuse to participate in this dishonesty. A 6-year-old opens a bad present and immediately looks like you've betrayed the family. There is no, it's the thought that counts. There is only the raw expression of a person who specifically asked for a dinosaur and has received socks. Then, somewhere around adolescence, birthdays begin changing. At 10, getting older is fantastic. Being 11 sounds incredible. Being 12 sounds powerful. 13? You're basically entering senior management. Kids will even add fractions to their age because every additional month matters. I'm 8 3/4. Adults never do this. You will never meet a 46-and-a-half-year-old. At some point, the direction reverses. The exact same phenomenon you spent childhood celebrating starts becoming mildly threatening. 17 becoming 18 feels like an achievement. 29 becoming 30 somehow requires emotional processing. 40 gets black balloons. 50 gets jokes about reading glasses. And eventually people start saying things like, I'm turning 29 again, which is fascinating because we've apparently decided aging is inevitable, but acknowledging it is optional. And yet the alternative to getting older is extremely clear. This is one of the strangest tensions inside birthdays. They celebrate survival while simultaneously reminding you that survival has an expiration date. Every birthday is good news and bad news delivered in the same envelope. Congratulations, you made it another year. Also, there are fewer years remaining now. Nobody puts that on the cake. Instead, we write, Happy Birthday in frosting. Maybe that's why birthdays start feeling different as you get older. When you're a child, a year feels enormous because it represents a huge percentage of your entire experience. The summer between ages 7 and 8 can feel like a geological era. Then adulthood arrives and entire years begin disappearing like someone accidentally increased the playback speed. January happens, you blink twice, and somebody is asking what your plans are for Christmas. Then your birthday appears again. Oh, you. And suddenly you're reviewing your life as though the date has requested a quarterly report. Where am I? What did I do this year? Am I where I thought I would be? Why does my back hurt now? Who are these children graduating from university who were apparently born in 2004? Birthdays quietly become checkpoints, and this can make them surprisingly emotional. Because there's the birthday you're actually having, and then there's the birthday you imagined you would be having when you were younger. At 12, 35 sounded ancient. You assumed 35-year-old you would understand taxes, own matching furniture, know exactly what career you wanted, and probably have some kind of mysterious adult folder containing important documents. Then 35 arrives, and you're eating cheese over the kitchen sink at 11:30 at night, wondering whether the strange noise your car made yesterday is expensive. And yet there's something strangely beautiful about birthdays, precisely because they are arbitrary. Nothing physically changes at midnight. You don't wake up with a software update. There is no biological notification saying, version 34.0 successfully installed. You are essentially the same organism you were 6 hours earlier. But humans are obsessed with marking time because time itself is invisible. You cannot see a year. You cannot hold a decade. So we build little markers around it. Birthdays, anniversaries, New Year's Eve, graduations. We divide this enormous, continuous experience into manageable pieces and then hold ceremonies when we cross the imaginary lines. Maybe we need that. Because without those lines, life would just be one uninterrupted sequence of mornings. There's also something deeply strange about the fact that your birthday is technically not your achievement. If anything, the person who did most of the work that day was your mother. You were barely involved. You arrived confused, probably screaming, with absolutely no understanding of what was happening. Yet every year afterward, you receive the congratulations. Your mother should probably get the cake. And then there's the deeper question hiding underneath the entire celebration. Why are we celebrating the day you arrived here when you had absolutely no choice in the matter. Nobody remembers agreeing to be born. You just became conscious one day somewhere in childhood and discovered that a decision had already been made on your behalf. You were here. You had a name. You had relatives. You lived in a country. People had expectations. There were already rules. Apparently, you were supposed to go to school soon. And every year, the anniversary of this unexplained arrival comes back around. Maybe that's what birthdays actually are. Tiny annual reminders of the most improbable fact in your entire life, that you exist at all. Out of all the people who could have existed, across all the possible combinations of human beings, across billions of years of history, somehow there is currently a person with your exact face, your memories, your embarrassments, your favorite songs, your specific way of making coffee, walking around on a rock in space. And for one day every year, people who care about you stop what they're doing and acknowledge it. You're here. Still. Which might be why, underneath all the candles and balloons and awkward singing, birthdays can feel strangely important even to people who claim they don't care about birthdays. It isn't really about becoming another number. It's about somebody remembering that you happened. Maybe that's also why being forgotten on your birthday hurts more than it logically should. Nothing has actually changed. You still woke up. The planet still completed the orbit. But somewhere inside us, birthdays became proof that our existence registered in other people's minds. A message arrives. Happy birthday. 14 characters that basically mean, I know you exist. I remember when you entered my life. You are still stored somewhere inside my version of the world. That's actually quite a lot for 2 words. So yes, birthdays are extremely weird. We gather around a flaming dessert, perform the same ancient-sounding song, give objects to someone because the Earth returned to a particular section of space, congratulate them for an event they cannot remember, ask them to make a secret wish, and celebrate the fact that their body has successfully avoided catastrophic failure for another 12 months. And somehow, this is normal. But maybe the weirdness is the point. Maybe humans invented birthdays because existing is so strange that once a year we need an excuse to look at someone and say, I know none of us really understands what's happening here, but I'm glad you're here for it. Then we eat cake. That said, how old are you now? Let me know in the comments. And hey, I'm Voss, and I'm glad you and me are here, even if none of this makes sense.